Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend from Missouri for his leadership in getting us to this point. So many other chairmen will talk about that too, but I want to rise in strong support, Mr. Speaker, of this one big, beautiful bill. This bill that's going to deliver on so many promises that the American people asked us to do for them. You know, we have elections in this country, and we had an election that had a lot of crystal clear messages sent in November. And we had a contrast, maybe one of the sharpest contrasts between two candidates for president. And if you read this bill, and maybe some of my friends on the other side haven't read it by some of the comments they've made, because you would think it's 2017 all over again when you listen to the things that they said, the same things they're saying tonight that they said in 2017, none of which turned out to be reality. And so they had an opportunity to make their case for raising taxes on the American people. In fact, their candidate for president was for a lot of the same things they're for tonight. Letting the Trump tax cuts expire, to punish those middle-class and low-income workers who benefited the most from those tax cuts, benefited tremendously. President Trump said that he was going to lock those tax rates in, not giving all these tax breaks you're talking about to millionaires and billionaires, but in fact to help the working families of this country who are struggling. They struggled after 4 years of the last administration. The weight of the failures of their policies that raised inflation, raised interest rates, made home ownership unachievable, made the ability to fill their own grocery carts unachievable. And President Trump said he would reverse it. How else did he say he was going to reverse it? President Trump said that we were going to produce more American energy. Now, the other side of the aisle has been very clear for years with an all-out assault on American energy. They've carried it out. They voted for it. They campaigned on it. And the voters rejected that false premise, that failed approach. Now, maybe they're upset that the voters said we want to produce more energy in America. But President Trump was crystal clear. You elect us, elect President Trump, elect a Republican House and Senate, and we will deliver for you. We will open up more American energy. From Anwar in Alaska to the Gulf of America. That's what he campaigned on, and maybe they're upset that he's actually delivering on those promises. And this bill delivers on those promises. A promise that will lower prices at the pump. When you go to the gas station, you'll be able to fill up your car. And so that's in this bill, but it also creates more jobs. Now, there are some people clearly who don't like that. Not just my friends on the other side of the aisle don't want to produce more American energy. You know who else doesn't want those provisions in this bill? Countries like Russia, countries like Iran, who have been making billions of dollars a month selling their energy on world markets because of the failed Biden policies. The policies that allowed them to enrich their countries and use that money for evil, to fund the war in Ukraine, to fund wars on terror around the world, terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, funded by the billions of dollars a month that those countries got from selling their oil on world markets because America was shut down. Well, America will be shut down no more when this one big beautiful bill is passed into law, because we will be able to produce our own energy here in America. You know, my friend Chairman Smith worked incredibly hard to make sure that this bill delivers for the whole country to get economic growth again. You will see an American renaissance, a golden age in this country that we haven't seen in generations. Why would people vote against that? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, the press talks about the other side being a party in disarray, and maybe you're seeing on display right now why, when they are vocally opposed to these kind of policies that'll get their the country back on track? Why do they say tax cuts for the millionaires and the billionaires when they know it's not true? I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker. Because not only do they know that's not the case, but they know who benefits the most from this bill. You know, one of the great new provisions of this bill that President Trump campaigned on, that Chairman Smith made sure to deliver on, was no tax on tips. Now, the last time I checked, Elon Musk does not get paid in tips. But you know who does? A lot of hardworking people across this country. Any restaurant you go to, talk to the waiters and waitresses. Ask them about their hopes and dreams. Ask them about their families. And what would they do with just a little bit more money in their paycheck? Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that big provision that every Democrat is going to vote against, the average tip worker makes $32,000 a year. And every Democrat will vote no on that benefit while they hide behind the lie of the millionaires and the billionaires. Because they know that's not the case, but they also know if they're going to vote against every hardworking waiter and waitress who averages $32,000 a year, how do they get away with it? They've got to create some fake boogeyman that they can point to and say, gee whiz, look at the billionaire over there, as if class warfare, dividing Americans, is their way to try to get more power in Washington. How about we give people in America more power? Take it away from Washington. Empower the people in this country who have been struggling for too long. If you want to live the American dream, it can still exist. For a lot of people, they thought it was going away. President Trump ran and said, I will renew that promise. But it only happens if Congress delivers. Now, the other side will vote against it, every single one of them in lockstep. And they will root against the success of this bill. And then if it were to fail, they'd just go, look at that, the country's still in demise. Because they were against it every step of the way. We saw this play out, by the way, in the State of the Union just a few months ago, right here in this chamber. And America watched in shock. They want to see us come together. Can't we at least come together on things we agree on? And so there stood President Trump right at that podium, Mr. Speaker. And he talked about so many of the great things of this country. Not partisan things, things that we used to all celebrate. Mr. Speaker, the President Trump, pointed over there to the balcony, where not only was the presidential family seated, but they also had some special guests. He pointed to a 13-year-old boy who had just beaten cancer. You want to talk about something that can unite the whole country, that can bring us all together. To say, yeah, you know, we might disagree on issues, big and small, and that happens. That's America. But we can all celebrate a 13-year-old boy who just beat cancer, Mr. Speaker. And what happened when he said that? We rose up and applauded, as we all should have. But what else happened? The other side sat there, sat down, grumpy, angry. I don't know why. I wouldn't even say, Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order, Mr. Speaker.
House will be in order.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't say it was because that he beat cancer, but it was just because President Trump happened to point out that he beat cancer. We should not root for or against a person like that based on what President Trump says he's for. Just because the talking points of the party went out and said, anything President Trump's for, be against. That's not a party platform. This country wants direction. President Trump ran on a direction, and their party did too. Wasn't like it wasn't laid out in the campaign. President Trump said he would secure America's border. That actually was the number one issue. All across the country. I got to go around a lot of parts of this country. You hear from a lot of different people. You see what their hopes and dreams are, but you'll also see from them, and they'll tell you, what they want to see us come together and address. And it didn't matter what part of the country you went to. They all said, for goodness sake, can we secure America's border? Millions of people coming in illegally. Many of them really bad people, gang members, violent people that were harming Americans. We saw it over and over again. Laken Riley murdered. We finally brought, by the way, the first bill President Trump signed into law was the Laken Riley Act to say if you come here and harm an American citizen, you're gone, you're deported. And this bill allows for the deportation of violent criminals that come here illegally and harm American citizens. We should all support that. The other side doesn't. They'll fly to Venezuela and El Salvador, Mr. President, to try to get out of prison a gang member who beats his wife. But in this bill, it allows President Trump to continue securing America's border. He's done phenomenal work on his own through executive action protecting America. But he needs money to build the wall. He needs money to let our Border Patrol agents have the ability to compete with the drug cartels of Mexico. It's embarrassing that today the drug cartels of Mexico, have better technology than America's Border Patrol agents. And we said we're not going to allow that to happen again like the other side did. We're going to do something about it. We're going to give them those tools, night vision goggles, drones, other things, so that they can actually do the job that they came here to do. They put their lives on the line to keep us safe. The least we can do is allow them to have the ability to be safe themselves, to go home at night to their families while keeping our country safe. It's in this bill. We deliver on that promise, and so many others. We're making America competitive again in our military so that we can finally confront the threat that China poses militarily. We all talk about it. We all know what it means. But are we going to talk about it or do something about it? President Trump wants to do something about it. This Republican majority wants to do something about it. In this bill, we deliver on that promise. Everybody who votes no is saying no to that. Again, hide behind the millionaires and billionaires, but you're voting against strengthening America's military because that's in the bill. You're sure not talking about it on the other side, Mr. Speaker. We haven't heard them talking about it because they're about to vote against that. So let's be honest about it. But when you think about those benefits, you also got to recognize what a no vote means today. Because we've got two buttons. You press yes and you can press no. And if you vote no, you're voting against American energy. You're voting against securing America's border. You're voting against helping those middle-class families. You could run all the numbers. 22% tax increase on low and middle-income families. We're not talking about the millionaires and billionaires. We're talking about a family making $70,000 a year combined, who's struggling to get by, would like to make a little bit more investment maybe in their kids' education, might want to take a family vacation, and this bill gives them the opportunity to do it. And it also gives every small business in America the opportunity to make investment in America again. 199A provision that's locked in permanently so there's no uncertainty, so we can grow more jobs in America. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for a lot of us here. That's what a yes vote gets. A no vote tells every small business in America that they will be at a competitive disadvantage with the big corporations. So you hear them rallying, Mr. Speaker, against the fat cats and the big corporations, yet if they vote no, these are the facts, the big corporations, the global companies get a 21% rate, and your local small business would end up with a 43% rate. More than double. They would be non-competitive, your local small businesses, with the big corporations. We said that's not fair. We want to allow our small businesses to compete on a global stage with the big national corporations. And we do that in this bill. A no vote doesn't do that. And yes, we root out waste, fraud, and abuse, Mr. Speaker. Waste, fraud, and abuse so that vital programs in America actually work better for the people who deserve them. Why would somebody come up here and defend hundreds of billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington when hardworking families are barely struggling to get by and pay their taxes, and are infuriated when they find out some of the waste that's going on up here and saying, when is somebody going to finally do something about the fraud so that I feel comfortable that if I'm funding my government, it's going to go to help the people who deserve it and not some 35-year-old kid who's fully able-bodied who's sitting in his mom's basement playing video games, getting over $40,000 in taxpayer-funded benefits while you're working 2 jobs. While the waiter or waitress averaging $32,000 a year is struggling to get by. We help them. That's who we're helping, those families who are struggling. And we will get this economy moving again. You can vote yes or you can vote no. I wish everybody would vote no. A yes vote gets America's economy moving again. Allows President Trump to continue fighting for the hardworking families who elected him all across this country. Every swing state, majority of the American population want this kind of relief. So we're going to keep moving forward, Mr. Speaker. We're going to deliver for those families who deserve this help, who want to see America come back. And they know America can come back, but they know America's been held back for the last 4 years. The same people who have been telling you that President Biden's health was just fine are now telling you all these other things about millionaires and billionaires. We're going to get this right. This bill finally starts to right the ship of state. We all should come together and do that, Mr. Speaker. We've got so many great people who have worked so hard to get to this point, and we're still at the early stages. Let's send this bill over to the Senate. Give them the opportunity to have their say as well. But ultimately, let's go deliver. Let's go deliver for that single mom who's working the night shift at a diner right now, who's going to have more money in her pocket because of this bill, who's maybe going to be able to send her kid to college because of this bill. We're going to deliver for those families. You could say yes or no. America's absolutely watching. America went to the polls in November and said, we want and are calling on Congress to provide this relief. We ran and said, we'll do something about it and we'll fix it. And we're actually following through, Mr. Speaker, on that promise made to the American people. President Trump is leading the way. President Trump is going to turn this country around, and this bill gives him the tools to do just that. I urge everybody to vote yes. I yield back the balance of my time.